Hi. Hi. So, I just want to ask you one question. All right. Imagine a military regime knocks on your door and says you have 10 minutes to leave. What do you take with you? You might take a family heirloom, some clothes, something for the kids. But in all reality, in all likelihood, you're probably going to take a cell phone or a computer. And we like to look at our tech and think that it's a tool of distraction, some symbol of social separation. It's just something you play a game on when you're waiting for the train. And we've all been at those dinners, where everyone's just looking down at their phone and no one's connecting. But in these kind of circumstances, when people are violently uprooted, the tech achieves its loftiest ambitions and becomes a connecting tool, a way of maintaining a sense of identity. So last year, I was working in Lebanon and Jordan with the assistance of Oxfam. And as we toured the tents and camps and little apartments, we would sit and hear people's stories, and they would often illustrate them like anybody else does, like we do, by taking out their phone and just sliding through a little slideshow of images, just to illustrate a point. And sometimes they would be simple, nothing, just like a driving lesson, or a great day out. I love that this has the mirror effect on it, it's brilliant. Or it would be something that I started to see a lot of, which was a house in ruins. And we ended up in Zatri camp, which is a refugee camp in northern Jordan, right near the border, where 80,000 people are now living in a variety of circumstances. And we spoke with this woman, Gofran, who was taking care of some rather unruly grandkids, as is pretty common there, considering full 1/3 of people in Zatri are under the age of 12. And she had one picture of her son. You can see him on the left. And he took the back roads to Sweden, she says, which usually means that he was connected with smugglers, usually through Facebook or through some other social media app. And they snuck him across the Bosphorus, and then he hiked north through Greece. And you can see, this is the only picture she has of him, and it's snowing. And there was pride in her voice and hope when she spoke about him, but we asked them all to also write something underneath these pictures just to get a little bit more. And she wrote that though she's proud of him, she still wants the family to be together, And in a camp like Zatri, which was really just supposed to be a temporary camp, after 6 years now, people have been there. They don't have a work identity. They don't have an identity within Jordan as refugees. And so they put down roots. They find work however they can. They name the streets of this camp. There's the Champs-Élysées. There's like little markets. And they have kids. They upgrade the plumbing of their little huts. And a city is made. And Zatri is now the 4th largest city in Jordan. And I just don't know what you do from there. So life outside the camp situation isn't necessarily better. And we visited a host community in the town of Salt City, outside of Amman. And we met Jabez and his family, 8 of whom live in this small room that was filled with laughter and grandparents and quite a nice, tight-knit community. They fled Homs in May of 2013 and moved into this little house. Their life up to the point that they fled was based solely around owning a corner store, a simple little dream. And in the weeks right before they left, they were still making their final payments. Jabez showed me a picture on his phone, and it was taken the night right before they left, and it shows their street and the corner store in ruins. So they moved down, fled the border, and now they're in this house. And again, the story is the same. They don't have a sense of identity. They have a very complicated living situation. And for some of them, it's just too much. Jabez's sister lived with them originally, and the limbo, the state of just not quite knowing, this lack of identity, was too much. So she left, went back to Damascus, and traveled north. And that was the last they heard of her. Jabez contacted friends using social networks, and just texting, and asked them to check on her. His friend went to their house, the roof was caved in, and there was no notice, nothing. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, this war has been, the Syrian conflict has been very dangerous for journalists, and especially for local stringers, the people that you usually rely upon to create some kind of local context or to get the smaller stories. And so for me, especially, I can't get access. I don't want to try. The image within the country is kind of blurred. It's hard to tell exactly what's going on. And often war seems like it's a macro thing, something that happens to a lot of people, and individuals are lost. So to see these little pictures, this picture here is just an image sent by a son to his mother, make it seem like something else. And yeah, I mean, this is in Shatila, a neighborhood in Beirut, and this picture was sent by his son to his mother only a few weeks before he was killed in a bombing in Yarmouk, in a suburb of Damascus. And Shatila is an interesting place as well. In Beirut, it's a refugee camp that was originally set up to house Palestinians fleeing the conflict in 1949. So history kind of sits on top of history, and these stories get quite confused. And as always, you kind of want a black and white story, but it doesn't really happen like this, and things get quite gray quite quickly. And we traveled eastward out of Beirut towards the Beck Valley, which borders Syria, and we drove along a road that had a sign saying Damascus, 50 miles, and passed through the town of Beck, which is the capital of, which is the stronghold of Hezbollah, a Shia militia allied with Bashar al-Assad. And as we walked through the camps there and talked to people there, they advised us to never look at these cinder block buildings that were always by the side of the road, insinuating that we were always under observation. And this feeling of a police state, this feeling of being monitored, led to a lot of caution by the people who were living there. And we spoke with this man, Ali. It was the name that he gave us. We encouraged everybody to give us a name that they felt comfortable with. So he's from Raqqa, which is in northeast Syria, and is still tenuously being held by ISIS as the capital of the caliphate. And a curious thing is happening in Raqqa, where any men of military age, or any men really, are forced, under penalty of a fine, to grow a large, bushy mujahideen beard. And so, when Hezbollah or any of the Lebanese security services raid these camps, looking for anybody with ISIS or opposition sympathies, they swipe through the phones, pick everything up, and look for any text, any message that would imply any connection to anybody in Raqqa, any sympathy. And so you can imagine what they would think if they found a picture of a man with a big, bushy ISIS beard. So people like Ali self-censor, and they just erase every single image, every old picture, every new one, every contact. So the phones are just empty little shells. But the number still exists. So even when we sat with Ali, there was a little ping. He picked up the phone and showed us a video, this video here, of a rally in Raqqa. He didn't provide any context. He didn't say it was pro or con or anything. He just showed it to us and then erased it. So Syrian refugees are unique among refugees historically for having access to this kind of information. They know more about what has happened to them, about the context of it, and about what is happening around them. And I think this is a standard for how this is going to go from now on. You hear the phrase citizen journalism being thrown around a lot, and I think it has a lot to do with intuitive UI and how technical skills like framing, exposure, and anything associated with being a photojournalist, now you don't really need anymore, which is great. People are now connected and they can take control of the narrative. And also, it leaves open many of the issues associated with social media, with the echo chamber. And so, a lot has been written about this, but there are all these issues of susceptibility to radicalization, of the issue of nationalism in exile, and all of these different things. So though access to information guarantees a certain narrative. It doesn't necessarily guarantee access to a benign kind of truth. Anyway, thank you.
Did you want to do? Or?
All right. Yeah, and I'm doing an AMA downstairs at 3:30, I think. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay.
Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think there's been misappropriation of imagery on both sides, abuses, there's been censorship, and especially misattribution of certain videos. Who did it, where it happened. This is something that got very complicated very quickly. And so for me, seeing these kinds of images that you can kind of guarantee in some sense the authenticity of it, it kind of sidesteps a little bit of the issues associated with like citizen journalism on the ground. Yeah. Maybe else?
In your experience, you said they delete the pictures for self-censorship.
Yeah.
Do they not use cloud storage, and if so, why not?
That's a very good point. Well, I think a lot of them aren't quite aware of cloud storage, and also, yeah, it could help for sure. That is actually a question that I hear all the time, and I haven't asked them. So.
How is the internet in these places?
Well, I'm trying to remember the exact stat, but it's something like globally, most people have access to a 2G network. So in a place like this, they have access to some form of the internet, but it isn't necessarily, super high speed.